And welcome to our live stream here on this Friday. We're coming to you live from the Huckabee Theater, just outside of Nashville, where we will be recording our Huckabee show this weekend. By the way, it's going to be a very exciting and special show. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be our special guest this week. I'm very much looking forward to the conversation with him. You know, I'm not a Democrat. I probably would never have the opportunity to vote for RFK Jr., but I respect him. I do. I respect him a lot. And he has had the courage to say what he really believes. He's a man of conviction, and he's a man who has the courage to speak those convictions. I think it'll be an interview that you will find worth watching. Speaking of worth watching, this is worth watching, and we're happy to have you. Pam Case joins me as she does each live stream. She is going to be taking questions that come to us. If you send them to us in the chat, we will have a chance to go through them and get to as many as we can. More visibility, if you want that, send a super chat. We've got moderators who keep an eye on those questions coming in. They filter them to us, and we try to answer them. So what are we going to do today? Well, Donald Trump breaks the internet with his Tucker Carlson interview and his mugshot. We'll also analyze the presidential debate that happened this week and why 2024 should be a slam dunk for conservatives and specifically for Donald Trump. We start every live stream with a pre-show poll. We got a lot of people lined up to step into the electronic room with us today.
Yes, indeed. And of course, almost 500 votes as they were waiting in queue today to answer this very question: which is the greatest travesty? So here we go. Naming your kid Absidy, A-B-C-D-E. A-B-C-D-E. That's how it's spelled.
Wow.
Pineapple on pizza. Is that a travesty?
Yes, it is.
The word, you and I would debate that, by the way. The word moist, or Biden's attempts at speakery.
Okay, so as bad as pineapple on pizza is, it's definitely Biden and his speakering.
All right. Well, you are correct. 85% of those on the poll today went that direction, and then followed it up with naming your kid A-B-C-D-E, Absidy, and followed by pineapple on pizza, 4%, and the word moist, 3%. Can I take a break to say just to everybody out there, your birthday was this week.
It was.
So a big old happy birthday from all of us here at the live stream and the Huckabee Show, and hope you enjoyed your special day. I know you were on the road.
I was in an airplane for the first half of it, flying back from the West Coast, where I delivered a speech on Wednesday night. And it was actually in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is not the easiest place in the world to get to. So you fly to Spokane, Washington, and then you drive about 40 minutes over to Coeur d'Alene. Beautiful area. Wow. What was really beautiful, it was 68 degrees when I got off the airplane midday on Wednesday.
Oh, my gosh.
And what was cool about that, literally. And I guess figuratively, last week in Arkansas, the heat index one day was 121 degrees.
Yeah.
I think it was the air temperature was 106, but the heat index 121.
Yeah. The South has taken a beating, but I've looked ahead to next week's forecast. Now, we don't usually do the weather on the show here, but I'm going to mention the fact that it's going to be in the low 80s in the Nashville, Tennessee area next week. I am not kidding. With a low in the 50s, by the way.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. All right.
When I come up next week for our show taping, I may not leave. That'll be pretty spectacular. Well, our top comment from last week's live stream comes from David Hyman, 9093, who said, "This episode, Governor, actually made me scream at the TV when Biden was asking for a single objective wherever his administration failed. I screamed out, all of them." David, I totally know what you're thinking there, because I had the same reaction. And he was screaming into the microphone when he said it, "Name me one." And I think a lot of us are saying, we got a whole list, Joe. You just want one? Okay, it's hard to come down to the big one, but there's a whole list of things. Border, economy, energy. And by the way, the latest today, this very day, you know what he's now going after? Ceiling fans.
I'm sorry?
Ceiling fans. Okay. I'm not making this up. You know, he's gone after gas stoves, of course, obviously cars, furnaces, air conditioning, and now what he's proposing rules that would eliminate 30% of the ceiling fans that are being manufactured, mostly by smaller businesses, because they're not energy efficient enough. And I'm thinking, Joe, the whole point of a ceiling fan is to stir the air so we don't have our thermostats as high, or as low. And therefore, you can save energy. So this guy wants to get rid of 30% of the ceiling fans. So I guess then everyone will just turn their air conditioning up.
Yeah.
How does that make sense?
I don't know. What if we'd lost 30% of the ceiling fans this last week?
Oh.
We'd had a problem.
Oh, my gosh. Anyway, I've got a question for you this week. Will the mugshot of Donald Trump make people more likely or less likely to vote for him? Will the mugshot of Donald Trump make people more likely, less likely to vote for him? What is your answer? Leave it in the chat or the comments section below. And be sure to hit the subscribe button, that notification bell that is right there on the screen. Be sure to like the live stream and to share it with other people and tell them that you are watching. All right, first up, we want to go to really a series of videos that kind of depict Joe Biden as anything but this narrative that is said about him, that he is the empathizer in chief, that he understands and he feels people's problems and pain. Well, I think it's kind of getting a little hard to believe that, because when he finally showed up after 2 weeks since the Maui wildfires killed more people than have ever been killed in a wildfire in the United States history, and there's still between 800 and 1,000 people missing. I hate to say most likely dead, but most likely dead. The death toll could go well over 1,000 when it's all finished. And Joe was reluctant to go. He wouldn't even talk about it. He kept saying, no comment, no comment. I'll deal with that later. And, you know, it was just ridiculous. But he finally, I guess the pressure got too much. He had been on vacation in Delaware. Then he went to Lake Tahoe for part 2 of the vacation. And finally from Lake Tahoe, he and Jill Biden flew over to Maui, and he spent just a couple of hours there, less time than the flight took to get there, and then right back to his vacation. Now, here's what we want to show you. If you're going to go, and this devastating fire has killed so many of the friends and families of these people who are there, you would think you want to talk about them. Watch and see what Joe talks about.
I don't want to compare difficulties, but we have a little sense, Jill and I, what it's like to lose a home. Years ago, now 15 years ago, I was in Washington doing Meet the Press. It was a sunny Sunday, and lightning struck at home on a little lake that's outside of our home, not a lake, a big pond, and hit a wire and came up underneath our home into the heating ducts, the air conditioning duct. To make a long story short, I almost lost my wife, my 67 Corvette, and my cat.
But he didn't lose any of those things, because the records show, and news reports have confirmed, that it was basically a small fire in his kitchen. It took the fire department less than 20 minutes to put it out. His wife, his cat, nor his Corvette were in danger. They never were threatened. His house did not burn down.
Wow.
If you listen to that story, it's like my house burned down and everybody barely got out and we just barely got that Corvette out. None of that happened. It did not happen. Now, he's told that story multiple times. You'd think that some of his staffers would pull him aside and say, Mr. President, you can't keep telling that story because it ain't true. And everybody knows it isn't true. And it's so easy to document that it isn't true. This isn't like telling some story about corn pop at the pool and the little kids brushing the white hair on his legs, which was disgusting and creepy. This is a story that when he was vice president is easily disproven. And I just don't understand why he continues to say it. Now, let me pose this context. If you're one of the victims of the Maui wildfires, you've lost everything, including family members and close friends. They're gone. And somebody's going to come and try to comfort you. Is what you want to hear is their problem of a small kitchen fire and them say, yeah, I know how you feel. No, you don't know how they feel because you had none of that. It was just bizarre. Judge Jeanine Pirro on the Fox show The Five tore into Jessica Tavlaw over this because I think Jessica was trying to say, yeah, he was just trying to show his empathy. Judge Jeanine was having none of it.
He talks about the fact that he almost lost a cat. Are you kidding me? That he almost lost a cat? Jill and I know what it's like to lose. This guy has been lying from the moment he came on the political scene. He has a lack of empathy. He is egocentric. He's got a condescending smirk whenever anybody asks him a question from the press. He's lying and he's narcissistic. And you know what? He's not trying to make it feel like he's part of their misery. He's a narcissist and an egomaniac who's trying to make it about himself.
In the South, that's what we call ripping somebody a new one, okay? And that's what she just did. One of the survivors of the Maui fire was not impressed with Joe's visit and had a pretty poignant answer for Joe Biden's having been there as she talked to some folks on TV.
I think it was a little bit tone deaf. However, I can understand how he was trying to meet us somewhere and say, I understand, but unfortunately that is nothing that compares to what happened to our community, our beautiful little town, and the family, the children that were lost and disabled and the elderly. I mean, a car and your kitchen is kind of just a little sad to hear, you know. I mean, I think people really want to see you show up for us and provide an eighth of what you're giving to Ukraine. It's outrageous. Lahaina is so hurt right now, and it was tone deaf.
Yeah, it was pretty sad, and she brought up that amount that people are getting for their damage and things, $700 per household, compared to Ukraine, which is like thousands of dollars, thousands upon thousands of dollars for people in Ukraine. And I think that really hurt for people to think, because Biden came in and basically said, yeah, I'm going to give every household $700. Well, he's not giving it. It's coming out of us, not Joe. Generosity is not something you do with other people's money. So it wasn't his generosity. But it just seems such a pittance announcing that on the same day that he announced a new $20 billion package for Ukraine. Yeah. And people thought, really? So they're $20 billion worth and we're $700 worth. Didn't go over real well. Minnesota Senator Tina Smith, I guess these Democrats who are elected, they're required to go out and make fools of themselves on television defending Joe Biden in the indefensible moments of his presidency. And this is an exact example of that.
You know, listen,
it's great to be here.
I understand from my colleagues in Hawaii that President Biden was very warmly received there. And I think also that the president has a unique capacity to connect with people and express empathy for what they've been going through.
Well, if he has that great capacity, he did not demonstrate it while he was there. And I really was struck by her saying, oh, yes, the people really sensed how caring he is. The video I've seen of the motorcade when he came by, people standing on the side, they were holding obscene signs. They were giving him a single-digit salute and saying words. We can't play the video because the profanity in it is just unacceptable, even on a live stream. You just can't do it. We wouldn't do it anyway. And she's pretending that, oh, they just gave him such a warm welcome. Well, the welcome was anything but warm. They were angry that he finally showed up, and then he tossed him $700 and said, I'm out of here. I'm going back to Tahoe so I can finish my vacation. Obviously, the big story this week, the debates happened in Milwaukee. Fox News was the host for this first debate. And interestingly, the one person that everyone would, I'm sure, love to have seen, Donald Trump, didn't show. He told everybody he wasn't coming. And I have said publicly, I'll say it again, I don't blame him. I think it would have been a big mistake for him to show up. He's 50 points ahead of everybody. Basically, the point of the debate is there somebody who can emerge, who can challenge Donald Trump? Because he's so in front, way out in front of his next opponent, that they're all just basically hoping that they can get to be the number two, then they can go after him. But right now, they got to go after each other, and that's exactly what they did. What did Trump do? If he didn't go to the debate, He had a sit-down interview with Tucker Carlson that aired at exactly the time of the debate. And I think it was really pretty fascinating. Was it 250 million views?
Yeah, it's up to over 250 million now.
So many people watched it. 12 million people watched the Fox debate. So there's your numbers. Now, granted, some people didn't sit and watch the whole Tucker interview. But if 250 million people watched some of it, that's huge.
Yeah.
It's a lot of eyeballs. And so I think Trump proved that he made the right decision. If you did watch the debate, you saw some fireworks. And everybody thought that all the guns would be leveled at Ron DeSantis. It turned out that it was Vivek Ramaswamy who got all the attention. And it was very fascinating. Christie, who just likes to bully people anyway. Trump wasn't there, so he went after Vivek. But Vivek got the last word in this exchange.
I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here. And the last person in one of these debates, Brett, who stood in the middle of the stage and said, "What's a skinny guy with an odd last name doing up here?" was Barack Obama, and I'm afraid we're dealing with the same type of amateur standing on stage tonight.
Come over and give me a hug. Give me a hug just like you did to Obama.
The same type of amateur.
And you'll help elect me just like you did to Obama, too. Give me that
the
bear
same
hug,
type of.
Now, as somebody who has stood on a presidential debate stage 23 times, let me tell you what I noticed. Christie got a good lick in, saying gee, you borrowed a line from Barack Obama. Notice how Vivek, during that whole thing, when he was being attacked, just was standing over there laughing and totally, not like, "I can't believe you're attacking me." It's like, "I don't care. Go ahead." And then he dealt the knockout blow when he told Christie, "Would you just come over and give me a hug?" And he said, just like you did Obama. Because if you remember when Hurricane Sandy hit the Northeast, and Barack Obama went to New Jersey, this was, I think, in 2012. I think so. It was in the middle of that presidential campaign of 2012. And so Obama comes to New Jersey, and Christie goes out and hugs him. It was the hug that was heard around the world. And, everybody talked about, my gosh, it's one thing he is the president. You got to welcome him, and you should be glad he's there. But you didn't have to hug him and hold on for dear life like y'all were on a date. And so among Republicans, that was a scandalous moment, and one a lot of people never forgave Christie for. And for Vivek to, on the spot, bring that up and hit him, it was a beautiful thing from a debate perspective. Whether you like Christie or Vivek or whoever, I'm just talking about as a rhetorical moment, it was priceless. Asa Hutchinson, who is somebody I've known for 35, almost 40 years, and he is also in the race. He barely made it by 2 days, just got enough donors, the 40,000, to make it. But he said something that I have a feeling he will regret, and his poll numbers really reflect this. And I like Ace. He's a decent guy, was a good governor. But I want you to watch this, and let me tell you where he stepped across a line that he cannot go back and fix.
I did not raise my hand because there's an important issue we as a party have to face. And over a year ago, I said that Donald Trump was morally disqualified from being president again as a result of what happened on January 6th. More people are understanding the importance of that, including conservative legal scholars who says he may be disqualified under the 14th Amendment from being president again as a result of the insurrection.
That last word, insurrection. There was no insurrection on January the 6th. It was a protest that turned into a riot. But nobody went to the Capitol that day to overthrow the U.S. government, which is what is required in an insurrection. And for Asa to invoke the 14th Amendment and to somehow say, their legal scholars say, well, yeah, some very partisan hack legal scholars are saying it because they'll do anything to try to get rid of Donald Trump. Because in the 14th Amendment, there's something that you're disqualified from becoming president or holding the office if you engage in insurrection or sedition, which means you're trying to overthrow the U.S. government of the Constitution. First of all, Donald Trump did not lead an insurrection. He told these people to protest peacefully. That's what he actually said. He tried to get Nancy Pelosi to bring the National Guard in to keep the peace, and she refused. It was a protest. It became a riot, and it was horrible. And I've said from the week it happened that it was disgusting, and I regretted that these people went and broke glass and tore things up, and not all of them did, by the way. It was a small number, but still, it was wrong. Right. We've always said that. But it was no insurrection, not even close to one. A more likely view of an insurrection would be when Antifa in the summer of 2020 were burning police stations and city halls and trashing and burning police cars. They really did want to overthrow the government. Anyway, you could hear the boos in the crowd as people were jeering him, but it's unfortunate that he went there. He sounded like Liz Cheney, and I just don't think that plays with Republican voters, not just the Trump voters, but any Republican voter who resent the Nancy Pelosi, Liz Cheney narrative that this was an insurrection. The real insurrection that happened in 2020 was the collusion and conspiracy that the intel agencies, the FBI, the Department of Justice, the Democrat Party, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook all conspired together to change the outcome of the election by lying about Hunter Biden's laptop, by not telling the truth. 51 intelligence officials signing a letter saying that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It never was, and they knew it wasn't. That's really as close to an insurrection as we may actually get. Well, let's take a couple of questions.
Ready for some questions? All right. Thank you, everybody, by the way, for your birthday wishes. Gov will have to go back in and take a look at those. Yes. Several people wishing you a happy birthday today. Star Trek Maniac started with a super chat very early today. He's asking, what is it going to take for the GOP to stop this witch hunt? I am one that's tired of talk and no action.
It'll take court filings. This will not be one in Congress. It'll be one at the courthouse in each of the jurisdictions where it happened. And the reason I say that is I know people are pushing Kevin McCarthy to say, go ahead and start the impeachment. He could do that. I think there's enough evidence to warrant it. But the problem is this, an impeachment is only an accusation. Then it has to go to the Senate for trial. You would never get the votes in the Senate to even take it up. It would last 5 minutes on the Senate floor. It would be dismissed. And then Biden and the Democrats would say, see, we've been vindicated. No, you haven't been vindicated, but no one wanted to carry this to trial. So I've said all along, the smart play, make sure that all of your evidence is absolutely incontrovertible. Then keep letting it dribble out so that there are not only members of the press, but even some Democrats who can no longer defend what Joe Biden's done. Then you go to the impeachment. Don't hurry it, because if you do, it's going to fail.
Super chat today from Matt Meester, just basically saying hello to us. Mitchell Ryan with a super chat asking, do you think that some Hawaii voters will now turn on Biden?
I think so. I mean, it's hard to say, but we've seen the evidence of people who are really, really angry, not just at Biden, but they're angry at their state officials who turned off the water and wouldn't let them fight the fire because of their green policies that didn't want to, quote, waste water. So they wasted people's lives, who blocked the exits getting off the area that was most hit. And what we've also learned is that the power company spent more money on diversity, equity, and inclusion, the DEI nonsense, than they did to clear the brush from their power lines, which is where the fires started. So they should have been using their money to make it safer, to get the power lines off the trees and the trees off the power lines, but instead they were trying to be woke and make sure that they said the right words and used the right pronouns. And the result is a whole lot of people have died. That's what's tragic.
So Richard Wise writing today, and basically as we were referring to President Biden earlier, sympathy is feeling their pain, empathy is understanding their pain and helping them out of it.
A great distinction, and that's exactly right, and we did not have a whole lot of sympathy or empathy. Joe not only told that story about his kitchen fire, but then he tried to bring up that when he was a young senator, just elected, his wife and daughter, and it was a tragedy. They were killed in a car wreck. But we've all heard that story. It's a terrible, horrible story. But when you're going to Hawaii to deal with these families whose children have been incinerated, right now they're not caring about what happened to him 50 years ago. And that's when it was, 50 years ago, actually 51, 1972. What they want to know is, Joe, talk about us. And he didn't. He talked about himself. And that is an incredibly selfish thing to do. And it did not go over well at all.
Douglas Brown is writing today, Governor, do you have any level of confidence that the presidential election in 2024 will be fair and void of what he's calling significant tampering? Only if we make sure we vote and that the Republican National Committee, the RNC, hires a boatload of attorneys and poll watchers all over the country to demand that the law be followed in every aspect of voting. If not, it'll be rough. Speaking of interference with the election, Donald Trump's arrest this week was probably as big a story as the debates. And if you've been asleep for the last several days, you may not be aware that Donald Trump had to go to Fulton County, Georgia, Atlanta. And even though he's the most recognized face on the planet, this prosecutor, a Hardison Pack, whose husband, by the way, was a former Black Panther who they believed in insurrection for sure. And she files charges with against Donald Trump and 19 other people, wants to try them within 2 months, which is absurd, and insists that he come down and get a mugshot, because it was all about the theater of this. I mean, nobody says, oh, well, we got to get his picture so we'll know who he is. You know who he is. Come on. But he turned the tables on him, as he normally will do. And so he goes and he gives this glaring mugshot in which he doesn't look like, you know, somebody who is weak and cowardly and limps in and cries because he's getting fingerprinted. He looks like he's basically saying, go ahead and do what you're going to do to me, but I'm coming for you. And that's the look, as you see on your screen right there. I thought it was pretty strong. And he said himself afterwards, it was a sad day for America.
I really believe this is a very sad day for America. This should never happen. If you challenge an election, you should be able to challenge an election. I thought the election was a rigged election, a stolen election, and I should have every right to do that. As you know, you have many people that you've been watching over the years do the same thing, whether it's Hillary Clinton or Stacey Abrams or many others. When you have that great freedom to challenge, you have to be able to, otherwise you're going to have very dishonest elections. What has taken place here is a travesty of justice. We did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. And everybody knows it. I've never had such support. And that goes with the other ones, too. What they're doing is election interference. They're trying to interfere with an election.
Well, fascinating. That statement, his mugshot, got 145 million views on what used to be called Twitter, is now called X, and I don't get the whole name change. But that's the first time he's tweeted anything. It used to be his primary way of communicating, and then Twitter threw him off. They blamed him. This was pre-Elon Musk. And so they deplatformed him. Elon Musk put him back on the platform, but the first thing he's tweeted since January the 8th of 2021 was that yesterday, when he tweeted his own mugshot, basically to say, here you are. And 145 million people have looked at it.
Well, and it's all now turning up on T-shirts, mugs. His marketing team is amazing because they immediately put the mugshot on on things to help him with his campaign.
If they thought it was going to embarrass him, if they thought it was going to make people turn against him and say, well, I wouldn't vote for that guy. I've heard people, even Ben Shapiro, who has never been a Trump fan, has now come forward and saying that what a dumb thing the Democrats did, and that it was it's blown back up in their faces.
And we've just updated really too the Twitter or X post, 170 plus million views. So there you go.
All right, let's get to a few more questions we have coming in from our viewers.
All right. Let's see. 3 debaters sounded presidential. Vivek, Scott, and DeSantis. Everyone else sounded either unsure, sluggish, anti-Trump, or non-presidential. Your thoughts on that, Governor?
I mean, everybody sees it a little differently. I think they had a good night. He's got to work on his answers on the Middle East a little bit, but that's, we all have issues where we are not as knowledgeable as we will be as we become more into it. I thought DeSantis had a decent night because he didn't do anything that was horrible. He didn't get as much time. Interestingly, the person that got the most time was Mike Pence. And I think part of the reason was he kept interrupting people, and he would take the time even if it wasn't his turn. I was kind of surprised to see that in him. And who was the third one? They said, was it Nikki Haley?
No, it wasn't Haley, but I'd be interested. Yes, Scott.
Yeah, I think Tim Scott had a good night. He didn't make any flaws. His problem was he didn't get much time. He was down in the lower third of people who had time, probably because he is a nice guy and he didn't speak over people, interrupt and yell at them. And also he didn't attack Trump or anyone else on the stage. And quite frankly, this is why I hate these debate formats. If you want more exposure, violate all the rules. Not only the rules of the debate, but violate the rules of good civil behavior, and you'll get more time because the anchors say, oh, this is good TV. I know how this works. There are producers screaming in the anchor's ears. Go back to Christie. He just took a real shot at Trump or whatever he's done. And that's how you end up with time. And the people who have substance but who are polite about it, they get shoved to the corner. It's very, very unfortunate.
It wasn't in the list, but what about Nikki Haley? What were your thoughts about that and some of her responses as she was going back and forth with the other men on the platform?
Yeah, it was. And that's going to be a big issue in the campaign. I've said, and I want to say again, I don't think the issue of life is a loser for Republicans. It only would be if we're too cowardly to take it head on. We need to be bold about this. We're the party of life. The other guys, they are the party of believing that you can abort some baby right up until the moment of birth. Now, interestingly, one of the things Democrats are going to have to try to contend with is that Bidenomics is a horrible failure, and they cannot defend it, although they are still trying. The DNC chair, Jamie Harrison, says that the reason that people disapprove of Joe Biden's handling of the economy is, he didn't say it exactly this way, but basically, they're just too stupid to know how good it is. Watch.
63% of Americans disapprove of the way that the president's handling the economy. His campaign thus far has focused on the economy. It does not appear to work. Why?
No, you just got to keep going out there, making sure that people connect the good things that are going on with the president, because they're happening because of his policies.
Yeah, he's doing a bang-up job. That's why the average American household is losing $700 a month. A month. Wow. In inflation and lost wages. Wages are down 3%. Inflation is up. And so now you have this double whammy. Prices are higher. The money that you need to buy the things that are now higher, your money to get there is lower. And that gap creates about $700 a month for the typical American family. So people, no matter what Joe Biden says, they know it's harder to put food on the table. They know they're struggling to put gas in their cars to get to work. And they know that when they bought their kids back to school clothes, they could barely afford a couple of pair of pants and 2 or 3 shirts because the prices are up. Food prices being the most significant up. And NBC, of all places, who love themselves some liberal Democrats, even they had to admit that Bidenomics is a failure.
Talk sort of where the facts, where the numbers, where the figures are here, right? Inflation matters to people. We know that's a big driver. It hit a 40-year high last summer of about 9%. It is down now 3.2%. It's lower than it was. It's still higher than what the Fed wants to see, which is why they've kept raising interest rates. It does mean that the mortgage rate, which you heard about, is up to 7.5%. That's the highest it's been in 20 years. Overall national debt, $33 trillion.
Yeah, those aren't the kind of numbers that an administration goes out there and celebrates. You just don't. We want to end on a kind of an uptick, and this is one of those funny moments where a person is being identified all about this nonsense of, I can just identify whatever I want to be, and that makes me that person. And the interviewer is brilliant in the way that he handles it, and I want you to see this before we go.
Can you identify as a black person?
No.
Why?
Because I'm not black.
I'm not a woman, but I can identify as a woman according to you.
If you transition, maybe.
What defines a transition?
Like, if that's your goal, you know?
If you believe it.
Sure.
If you believe you're black, why aren't you black?
Well, that's just not, that's like genetics. That's like ancestry. Like, you're black, right?
You're also born a man or a woman. It's the same thing. That's also genetics.
Okay, I'm over it.
He's like, I really am this stupid. I'm going to have to leave. I love it when someone makes a fool of themselves on the most obvious things. Yeah, I can just identify as a person of a different gender, but I can't identify as a person of a different race. Why not? You can just make this stuff up. It's utterly insane. Hey, I hope you've had a good time today, and be sure to leave your questions in the comments section. We'll continue to look at them and read them. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because I'll tell you, YouTube, they don't do us any favors in showing our content to people. So the best way that you can get all of our content is with the subscription button, hit the notification bell, and then check on the channel. Now, next week, different schedule, so please note, we will not be here on Friday. We will be here on Wednesday, August the 30th at 1:30 p.m. Central. That's when you can catch us on the next live stream. It's why you need to have the notification bell and the subscription going for you.